Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield and I'm a professional dance choreographer and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States, and we are here reviewing the wide shots of all the rounds of the IDL that just happened in Los Angeles a couple days ago. I've already looked at the live stream, so I know who wins, I know the placements, and I know who wins each round, but we are going to talk through all the criteria that each team was judged on in order to hopefully be a helpful aid as to why certain teams moved on and what qualities or what criteria they hit and nailed that helped them get there. So I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be nice to see these in a wide shot because there was a lot of different camera angles, which was really cool. I was appreciative of seeing the caliber of the filming of it, and we're going to be able to hear some of them with music because I ran into copyright issues on the live stream whenever I took a watch of it the other day. So I'm ready. I hope you guys are. Let's get into the rounds. First round we're going to watch is Quickstyle versus GRV. We're not going to do a choreography breakdown like we normally would if we're looking at K-pop choreography or things like that. We're going to be affiliating this similarly to how we look at D-League. If you don't know what D-League is, it's Japanese professional dance league, where they have a set list of criteria. We're going to basically look at each criteria and state who took what thing. So I'm ready for it. Let's start with Quickstyle. Boom. I'm remembering GRV went first. My bad. Really appreciate the approach to the track, the type of layers they're choosing to put into it. I wasn't able to see that on the front row shot. They look much cleaner in the wide shot. Really like the textures on this. Cool. Boom. Awesome. Immediately going. GRV, round one. See why we can appreciate the wide shot is that there's so many things going on outside of the small groups, and you're able to clock transitions way more accurately. We have a judge cam is what this is. can see that way more clearly here. All right, so we're gonna do a speed run here of who would take this round. From creativity and musicality, I would give that to Quickstyle because of, I mean, I kind of feel like we're gonna need to let these play, don't we? I'm gonna make it a little bit on the quieter side. We're gonna let Quickstyle play, and let's see which categories we'd let them take. I think that'll be more fun. Okay, creativity and musicality because of the song approach. Also, the types of textures that they chose to go about within their respective track. It was certain nuances of their dynamics. Also, the content itself, which the tricky thing is in regards to choreography, because they have an execution side, which we'll touch about in a second, but then they have a choreography side. So from how they structure the overall composition of their routine was very nice in how with this type of track you're not normally used to seeing this type of movement too, right? So that helps on the creativity, and you could really see with this one it allows for more breadth of digestibility, so there's more opportunity for you to be able to emotionally relate to it as well. There's more of an emotional pull here, whereas with GRV they had a very hype intense that helped take more categories, mind you, and also they got the fan vote. Oh, spoiler. And we'll touch on that in a second. But the musicality is so much more than just the type of song you select. It's what you choose to do with it. Also, there's psychology and emotions that can be in play on depending on the type of emotion you're wanting to show. How well did you utilize your movement in your music to help make that happen with your timbres. Timbre is sound context with your track. So I would say they're very solid for me on my selection for creativity and musicality. If we're going off of most of the other categories, you're going to see it happen more so with GRV. So we're going to go to them here, touch through. So GRV comes from the U.S. Los Angeles is the launch event, so they are the favorites in receiving the fan vote for their respective round. Yes, they all were selected. They selected who they were going up against in real time. That was cool. So they had no idea how to prep their routine for whichever team. You just had to come with 2 routines ready to go. For routine staging, when it comes to the creativity of content, you have Quickstyle, but it comes to how you chose to structure your content throughout the routine. They do a really good job of that. Notice they have a diagonal with 2 entrances here with content. Also, side note, they have Shiggy on here. If you didn't know that, Shiggy used to be on Avex Royal Brats with D-League, so he has professional dance league experience, which is a really cool thing to note. So far I'm saying Quick took creativity. I'm going to say GRV. Expect their name to drop a lot on routine staging. Complexity of movement. They have a ton of polyrhythms and a higher BPM, which is going to up the complexity. Complexity deals with polyrhythms. Multitasking, which is exactly what you see. Their staging also is polyrhythm through delegation, where you have multiple parts of your music you're representing. You have that here. That's the risk you run with a Quickstyle track, which is what we got. The BPM is slower. There's more to fill within your music. There's really cool moments within it that helps your musicality, but here they were going for every other category, right? So I would say the difficulty as well because of speed, timing, and how they were sequencing their choices, the risk-taking, going to the floor, the time. It's really timing and the quickness to get from one move to another. That is what also gives them both complexity and difficulty. So I'm going to say GRV and GRV. For overall impression, That's a pretty subjective category. That's going to go off of which one did you resonate with more. I really liked both for different reasons, so I'm going to abstain voting for that. That can swing either, but sometimes that can be, you know, a tiebreaker. In many cases, spacing, that's going to lean to GRV as well. They had similar numbers, which I also begs the question, do we have limitations on quantity? Because I do know with D-League, because no, if you didn't know that league or know me from that, that's the primary dance league that I do breakdowns with. So this is fun to see with a different pool of people. With them, they have a very limited quantity that's allowed on stage. They also self-produce their music, which was something that I thought was interesting, that we were playing music at risk of copyright here. And I do know 1mil ends up using their own track, which is kind of dope. And I didn't know that until Patreon told me, which was really sick. But with spacing, I'm going to give to GRV because of when you're looking at your staging, of course, is how you formulate your formations, how you get them moved throughout the space, how you utilize your people through levels, transitions, what have you. How are they spaced out? It's the execution of that staging. They're spaced out pretty well. Quickstyle also is, so that can come down to a technicality, who had more complexity and who had faster, more difficult spacing choices, and that would go to GRV. And that sometimes is how you can separate two high-quality performances. You look at little things such as timing, complexity, and those things in the specific category of spacing. Execution of skill, that's also, once again, if you have more complexity of movement, that's more you got to justify if you meet that. That is kind of one of those things where with skill, they had you gotta have to have an idea of what kind of dance styles you want represented. Notice this is technically a street dance competition. They're not promoting it as such, nor, I mean, all the teams have some degree of street dance affiliation, but they're not explicitly saying this is a street dance choreography competition, because we would be holding this to a very different position, and the categories and criteria would need to also shift as well. So that's something that we have to remember here. So we're not going to, say, oh, that's not hip hop. That's not a part of the criteria, nor is that something promoted. So execution of skill, we got to look at what they're doing. A lot of their sequences have heavy isolations. I believe Clay touched on a ton of intricacies. So how I would explain what an intricacy is it's a combination or a fusion of different techniques in play, but they're happening in succession and hybriding in a formula, or in a formulated way that you're able to see it in either to your music, or you see it in a particular sequence, right? That is manipulated by timing or complexity, polyrhythms, right? So execution of skill and movement can go hand in hand on complexity of movement and difficulty of skills. But also note, though, just because your skills are difficult doesn't mean they were executed well. So that's something that we run into quite often whenever I was adjudicating for HHI, was that exact thing. So I would say because GRV met the execution of their movement and execution of the complexity of their movement, they would most likely take those categories as well. So notice it's overwhelming in the direction of GRV, but I don't believe they would take all categories. Uniformity and cleanliness, GRV had the front cams really showed this, where if you look at Quickstyle, they have such an individuality in how they're executing through their torso. Their extremities are pretty cool, pretty on par with each other, but notice that some of our ranges, which is how you go from A to B of a move, that wasn't 100% in check, which will directly affect uniformity and cleanliness. Another example would be I'm just going to use D-League as an example because it's the only other professional dance league that I have been actively a part of in the reviewing of to use. So just keep that in mind. There is another international dance league that's based out of Holland, I believe. I'm going to drop the link to them in the description, because sometimes that can get lost because this IDL, is on the SEO side with the websites. I want to give all dance leagues their flowers, so I just want to let you know there is another international dance league. We want to respect them, and they've been around for like 6 years. It's a different format. This organization is new, but even though the affiliations are more established, the format is new, but the idea of a professional dance league is not. So keep that in mind. They're intentionally promoting a global side. which D-League, of course, is tailored to just Japan. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of verbiage that's going around. So hopefully I can be helpful to expand your horizons. If you like watching professional dance, there's many spaces where you can go to celebrate it. So moving on from that, though, GRV had more cleanliness on extremities and on their choices, right? Which would be their torsos here, right? Lean through. Now notice some of this was a little bit off with like the subtlety there. That was cool, but even on the range choice of the hinge, how we cross over on the jacket, all of those things were nice and checked off. So GRV is a pretty safe selection for the uniformity and cleanliness and projection and communication. That comes down to sometimes it's your body language. I was trained to go off of body language, not off of faces, but faces can really help with that. Notice that it also says communication. Just because a routine can project energy outward does not inherently mean that it's going to be received well. It's not communicated effectively. So there are routines, quick styles. This can be subjective, so take it with a grain of salt. Depending on how a audience responds when a team comes on stage versus how they respond when a team finishes can be something that you can measure, especially when you have like a home field advantage. GRV doesn't automatically get projection and communication just because they're homegrown here, right? Even when the audience is like, oh my God, I know them. That's fine. That's one thing. Because if GRV's set sucks, then the audience will give a courtesy clap, but you can feel the space in the energy in the space change. So some of these categories, such as projection and communication, are really hard to get on a video, but based on the live stream shots that I was given, that front cam vibe, and the reason why I don't look at front cam for this type of stuff is so we can actually look at spacing and staging, because that's really hard to catch on a front cam, is you see how their choreography and how they are projecting, not just letting the song do it, they're matching the song and projecting out. Quickstyle does a good job communicating, but were they communicating louder than GRV's projection? I don't believe so. So even if Quickstyle took that category, fan vote went to GRV, so it was a clean sweep. If you didn't know, spoiler alert. Yeah, go watch the live stream and then come watch me. This makes 100% sense to me, but also remember, not a single team who ended up winning or losing won every single category based on how I was looking at them. And there's something to be said about that. And that's kind of the tricky thing too, whenever we're going off of points, which is what we're going to touch on when we touch on the round 2 placements, the point values that were given. If we go off of points compared to who took what category, we may be able to forget, oh, a judge just voted for GRV. We don't know by how much. We don't know how close of a call that really was. It just so happened that every judge and the fans voted for GRV. It doesn't mean that Quickstyle did all these things wrong. It's just GRV won this many categories that made them win the judge, right? So I kind of wanted to just throw all that out there. This matchup's a little bit more long-winded because we're establishing a lot of what these categories are, but hopefully we'll be able to get much, much faster with these other ones. So let's go to the next round 1. Okay, we have Brotherhood versus Royal Family. Once again, I forgot who went first. Brotherhood went first. That's okay. As soon as I said that, I remembered. Here we go. 2 thumbs up for using that. Gosh. The aura farming. Gosh. Okay, into Royal Family. Okay, so I'm going to say who won, and then we're going to talk. 5, 4, 3, 2. Brotherhood swept this, including fan vote. Brotherhood getting the fan vote. I know some people may be really surprised by that. I wasn't, because you have to understand Brotherhood and GRV kind of go hand in hand with this type of location. They were heavily involved, so much more in the body rock vibe scene than Royal Family or Quickstyle or Jam or 1 Million ever have been. So Brotherhood is kind of like, a lot of people have thought that they are an American team, and they're not. So it's very fun to see them here rep in Canada. But it did not surprise me that they got the fan vote. They were, I mean, the only way we really wouldn't know would be GRV versus Brotherhood, right? So, okay, let's go through. We're gonna just let Brotherhood's play, but we're going to talk through about both teams, and then we'll switch over to Royal. So hopefully there's this is your replay while we talk. Okay, creativity, musicality. Brotherhood is so competitive in that area. From a musicality standpoint, with their song selection, how they remixed it, as well as the usage of pop culture elements like aura farming. That was such a risk because yes, your audience understood it, but would your panel know that? And that's a tricky thing too. Whenever I was trained to not look at pop culture as a justification for musicality or complexity or creativity, because that is setting a precedence that I have to know everything about pop culture in the world, right? But part of that could be seen as, hey, I know my audience has seen this, and we're trying to get that fan vote. That could be a fan vote element. That could be an overall impression element where if it lands, that can help contribute to that, to the subjective areas of your scoring. So I think that was a really dope choice, and I think that's a really fun, iconic moment that most likely will get clipped to shorts. From routine staging, that's what makes this very interesting. Brotherhood has a really nice way of phrasing their formations together and connecting them between the sections. When we get to round 2, we'll touch on that because that did affect my placement for them against the other teams that were in that second round. So the styles that they chose to go with, the risk of that, good for them on that. Routine staging, royal family. Part of it, I would think, comes from the amount of time their routine was. If you look, Brotherhood and Royal have an almost possibly 50-second difference of the routine, right? So the more routine you have, the bigger the risk you will run if you're not given a time limit, or if you have a time minimum, but you're just going until you don't need to go anymore. The thing that you'll run into is something that I do believe Royal Family ran into is when you have, the more you're on stage, the more you have to showcase these elements and these criteria throughout the routine. It's not just one and done, right? So you're showcasing different staging choices. They had a lot of dynamics and a lot of different things along those lines, such as formation changes, transitions, levels, those types of things I would throw into staging, because all the other elements pertain to the movements themselves, not how they're packaged. So that's what I wanted to touch on with that. So I can see Brotherhood take that category. Now going here, and we're gonna let Royal play. Complexity of movement, something that Royal not struggles with, but they run the risk always, which is what makes it part of their brand, even since Paris was a part of it way back in the day. Request was just like this. Complexity. They aren't as polyrhythmic in comparison to Brotherhood in the sets that we're comparing, because it's a comparison game, right? Difficulty of skills, it comes from the authenticity. That goes to execution, which is a different story. So complexity and difficulty Brotherhood brought, they had really fun elements. What Royal Family knows how to compete on is projection, which is a category which I would safely assume can be a really strong thing that Royal would have taken. Overall impression, that's subjective, right? We won't really answer that one. Who left the best impression? The person who was the most relatable to pop culture could really help in leaving that type of I feel seen impression, so people tend to lean in those directions of that familiarity. So Brotherhood could have taken that as well. For spacing, Royal, if their routine wasn't as long, I think they could have been way more competitive in these categories. So for execution of skill and execution of movement, that comes down to they did a pretty decent, but they had some off moments, such as with the vibrations that we saw a little bit earlier. And whenever you choose to repeat something that's going to create a saturation within your routine, that's not going to help aid you in the sense of difficulty. Because if you can show me it 4 times in a row where I've already digested it, and then I'm watching you just go through the end of the phrase, and you're not showcasing complex timings, you're showcasing pocket 2, pocket 3 timings, which would be on the ands and the whole counts. We're not syncopated aggressively. We are more in this section, right? Good ripples, but remember, they're being directly compared to Brotherhood, who also showed that, but they also sequenced and streamlined their staging way more effectively in their choices. So note here, we're doing this 4 times, and then we have a body roll off, right? So we already have a familiarity of the brand of Royal, just like we have a familiarity of Brotherhood, so they ran into the very same thing note-wise with Royal. But the difference is Brotherhood helped supplement in other categories that Royal unfortunately weren't able to acquire. So uniformity and cleanliness, that's always a tricky one. Brotherhood, because they were both pretty clean, they had a longer routine, so it was more to be cleaned with. So I would say Brotherhood didn't have nearly as much. Almost 50 seconds, and that's the tricky things. You have 50 seconds of wiggle room to have to be cleaner. So if that's going to come down to who wins cleanliness and uniformity, that can be something for a judge. Projection communication, Royal knows how to communicate. They know how to project. That's one of the things they are known for, being so heavy on the performance side. So I can see them winning that category, but this type of fullness to, let's say, the amount of categories taken, well, from the proportion of Brotherhood to Royal Family is very similar to the amount of categories GRV took compared to Quickstyle. Doesn't mean that Royal or Quickstyle did anything wrong if they were matched up with different people, or they chose to do their round 2 encore stage routines. Could they have sought and taken more categories? There's always that chance as well, right? So all in all, this turning into a sweep was not surprising, especially the fan vote going to Brotherhood over Royal. Now the question would be, this was something that's cool about IDL, or their intention that they're trying to do, is they're going to each respective country to hold this event. What works in that is that each country has that equal opportunity to get a fan vote, right? Where they're like, they're the country, like Royal Family in New Zealand, New Zealand's going to be repping for New Zealand, right? Just like in Singapore, they're going to be repping for Jam. In Korea, they are going to be diehard for 1 mil. So whoever's against them, you're going to be working at a 1-point deficit out the gate, right? Which is, for me, I would say these first 2 rounds, unfortunately, is what they were operating in. So, but these were really interesting matchups nonetheless. Our next matchup is 1 Mil versus Jam Republic. Here we go. Both teams have fresh rosters, so that's what makes this one a really fun matchup, is that both, even though the brands are established, I would say 1 Mil has more of an established brand with the people in it compared to Jam. They both have a sense of, what is it? You're not quite sure what to expect because you have no idea what these people are 100% bring to the table in comparison to, let's say, Brotherhood, GRV, Royal, and Quick, right? So here we go. We're going to watch 1 Mil first and then Jam. Okay, and then Jam Republic. I think this is going to be the first time I hear the music for this one. That's a really, really fun one, honestly. That was cute. Because like I said, on the live stream that I looked at yesterday, it was on Twitch because at the time, the original live stream was down on YouTube. This one was copyrighted, so it was just silent. Someone just got to see the content. And then in round 2, I think 2 out of 3 tracks were copyrighted. So I'm actually really excited to see round 2. No, only one of them. I think it was... No, the encores. Was the encores, like 2 of them. I couldn't actually see, like, with its full capacity. Okay, we're gonna let him play, but we're gonna talk. So... This one ended up being a tie between the judges, and the fan vote's the one who helped with the victor. The victor, I'm announcing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1 mil took the victory. They took the fan vote. I understand why they took the fan vote. Would I personally, if I was in the audience, would I have voted for them? I actually don't know. I think it would have just been depending on being in the space. But let's talk through what made this one so competitive and so split. It comes down to criteria, right? So let's chat. Creativity, musicality. That can be handled in many different ways. They did a really good job understanding the music. For the most part, I mean, it's their own track, right? But he said, I would use an example of, say, doing something slow. I mean, there were some little moments of being slow dynamically, but notice that the focal point group wasn't dancing slowly, so it was missed wordplay potential opportunity, right? Little things like that. I would lean more into Jam Republic for that creativity musicality because of the song choice and how they choose to emulate it, which would beg the question. I'm so curious if others believe or were curious about whether or not Quickstyle versus Jam Republic, how that match would have gone because of their routines specifically they selected. Routine staging, I can see go in favor of 1 mil because of the types of formations they chose to do. However, they are receiving a very similar note that I would extend to GRV from their first round is the format of their staging. It's combo based, meaning that we're having a group, they're going to do a combo, right? And then they're going to break off and there's going to be another group that does a combo, which is something GRV also did. So which can, because if you could cite multiple teams doing that type of format, that's going to affect the difficulty or the captivation of it or the competitiveness of it if it's saturated in the space, right? Like this moment was really fun. They did a good job on the gimmicks on those types of things. It was really nice, and I like the dropout of the track is also fun. So complexity of movement, that's a tricky one. I would say this one's interesting because a lot of times you'll see teams, if they get complexity of movement, they got difficulty of skills. Because what can make a skill difficult is the timing in which you do it or the density in which you do it as well. But I may say that the difficulty of the skill is going to go to 1 mil because of the usage of their tutting and how they used it. Complexity of movement can go to Jam Republic because the sequences that they did weren't inherently the most difficult. Now they had certain skills. Well, that's what makes it tricky, right? And this is why they were a tie like the way they were. Because some judges would say that the tutting side was more complex or they was more difficult to execute because of the form in which you need to create that dynamic or visual, but that would come down to staging, right? So I would say 1 mil very safe to go in the area of staging. Let's let Jam Republic play and then we'll continue to talk. So maybe there's a chance that I could see with complexity and difficulty, you can see Jam Republic take it because remember, that's not the same thing as cleanliness and execution. That's a different story. So we're going to go to, let me go ahead and do this. Let's see, we're going to have JR. They took the first one. 1 mil took the second. I can see them take, depends on the section. We'll promote whether or not who had more complexity. Oh, man. Difficulty of skills. Oh, that's also tricky. I'm going to say JR had more difficulty of skills. Complexity, I'm leaving. Overall impression, I liked both for different reasons. So we're going to leave that out. Spacing, 1 mil definitely had a huge, they were able to really take over some of these execution ones. Execution of skill. Part of that comes from, I mean, there was, I believe, one person here. No, there was 2 little feature moments that weren't quite the clearest in their execution of their set skills. So I would lean more 1 mil for the execution side of it. For execution of movement is different than uniformity and cleanliness. If you need to be clean and uniform in order to execute it, that's where those can go hand in hand. So I'm going to skip execution of movement and go to uniformity, 1 mil. Projection and communication. I would say this one projected more. I would say commitment to character plays a huge role in this. But was that enough? I mean, once again, they had a split panel, which makes it really fun. That just having a clean routine is not enough. I really like the fact that this matchup ended the way that it did for that reason, is that it really makes you look at the details, right? So right now, I have JR for a few of them. I'm going to give him projection based on how we're seeing it here. Execution of movement, that's really tricky. I got a 3, 4. I have it pretty close here. There's some that I just can't do. Overall impression, I can't really go off of because I'm not there. Projection, too, is also really tricky to measure. Execution of movement, I'm going to lean more 1 mil for execution of movement and execution of skill, because I saw more crashes come from these guys. But when it comes to how their character is while they're doing the transitions, is highly commendable. So yeah, this is probably not the messiest, but the most competitive criteria, criteria draft out of them all that we have, which is what makes it so fun, honestly. Now, we look here, it looks like Jam Republic's at a 317, and then 1 mil's at 250. So we ran into, about not a full 30 seconds, but a good chunk longer on Jam Republic, which could that work against them when you teeter into the 3-minute mark? Is that something that you're kind of just fighting yourself on certain criterias, because the longer you're on that stage, yes, it gives you more opportunity to show complexity, to showcase certain skills, but also you run the risk of making your routine more simpler across the board throughout the routine in comparison to just, hey, here's this really cool moment, and I'm using and I'm pacing well, because that can affect your overall impression and your projection in communication. So all in all, even despite the copyright issues that I was experiencing, the where the cards fell, it wasn't really that surprising based on the categories and how you saw the teams when you put them against that criteria, right? It's what made it really fun. Everybody was competitive in their own right. I would say Quickstyle reminds me of DYM Messengers, and Jam Republic reminds me of Lifeful Alt Rhythm, both from D-League. So if you're like, what? I want to see more crews look like them, they're the perfect teams to look up, because they bring that kind of style and persona, and it's really cool to kind of see how they go about and approach their challenges and their matchups in that way. So I know you guys are probably ready for round 2. I'm ready for round 2. Let's go see the top 3 battle it out. Let's go. Okay, so for this, we are going to watch all 3 back to back to back. It is circumstantially in placement order, so we may be able to chat while watching the routine, because remember, I've already seen these, but if you haven't, please go watch them first and then come back and see me. I don't want to be the first watch with you. I need to be like a supplementary because you enjoyed watching them so much, you're watching somebody talk about it. Think of it that way. Okay, so I don't know how we're going to do this. Honestly, I literally just said we could try that one way, but let's just watch. Because it's the first time I'm watching this in wide shot. fun little finish there. Okay, going GRB. Okay, and then first place, Brotherhood. When I heard this for the first time yesterday, I totally thought it was John Mayer slow dancing in a burning room. Okay. So before we touch on the three teams, or like going through the categories while letting these play as to which of the three would make sense if they took that category, we gotta talk about the points. So 1 mil ended up getting 81 point something. We're just gonna go over the main numbers. GRV got 95, and then Brotherhood got 99.5. So my thing is that whenever you score so high, whenever there is a score that is that high, it makes it really tricky now for there to be anything better than what Brotherhood did. There's only 0.5 that you can work with of something that is of more competency, of complexity and creativity and musicality and XYZ and all that, to what was shown here, right? That's what a 99.5 is. This is the most creative, only 0.5 points, which could be like the offset of the flip that we didn't see super clean there. But they were, the best we've ever seen. Like how I was trained for points is that superior ratings in the 90s, where that's the most creative, that had the best staging, the best complexity, the most difficult, the best impression, best spacing, all that stuff. I don't believe that to be the case here. When I've looked at many routines and affiliations with all three teams. They're in different industries, in different fields, where we get to review the choreos. I would say GRV and Brotherhood, we get to see more in similar fields compared to 1 mil, but when I come from the position, I'll kind of leave it at this. I come from the position, I could see it fare better if instead of asking your judges to do an itemized point value for a criteria, when it's a direct 3-part matchup, is which team took what category, right, for a respective judge, and then they win the judge. Just like what we did in the regular matchups. That's something that D-League started doing. Very smart move, because they used to do points, and it used to be 1 point off from each other. And it was not fun. It was always such a thing. But if a judge is like, okay, Brotherhood took creativity musicality, but GRV took this, but 1 mil took this, then it makes more sense as to how they fare in their rankings. And we're not given any point value discrepancies that are going to naturally formulate, because was that the best Brotherhood routine we've ever seen in our lives? No, not by a long shot, personally. Because I have the receipts of many years. They have the receipts on YouTube over the years of incredible routines based on the circuits, right? Were they the best today? Yes. But was this the best routine Brotherhood's ever done? No. But for a 99.5, it gives and leaves that impression. I don't know. I could be the minority here, and that's okay. Remember, you don't have to agree with anything I'm saying. I'm just trying to provide a different perspective, different thoughts that maybe you think of, maybe you weren't thinking of. We're here for a good time, living it up. So we're going to let these play. Let's touch on what criteria exist and who took what for what potential reason. So with 1 mil, them scoring third makes sense. Their staging, their spacing had a lot of similarities to what we were already seeing executed from the first round. The high utilization of tutting was really enjoyable, but notice in the transitions of their staging, they used basket runs. That is a very basic form of a transition that GRV was doing in round 1, but they didn't do it as extensively and as abruptly as what we're seeing here. They're also not the cleanest. Could it be because of the outfits? The type of garment that you're wearing a lot of times can influence the range of your choices, which is the risk you run with that, which is why you do see teams wear the same thing. You saw GRV and Brotherhood do that. That did work in their favor on cleanliness. So they do have good choices in these little small groups. We have polyrhythm through delegation, but notice we have basket runs that are very, easy to digest, something that doesn't promote and spark creativity. This is really fun. The most creative elements of their choreography were the tutting sections, but because we were saturated in that in their first round, did that work against them here, or did it help them in any way in the second round? This is kind of the cool part as to having every team have 2 routines, because it kind of forces them to make sure they're not biting themselves, but make sure they're navigating in different genres or different concepts, so it allows for their audience and their panel, same panel, to be able to see, and you're not kind of downplaying your musicality and your creativity, because we're seeing similar saturations of your set replicated across both routines, right? Regardless of one having more complexity versus another, it's still the impression and the present state of it. So with the complexity of movement, they had some really cool options, but with the popping they added here, I thought it was nice, but the timings, and they did not work well in their uniformity. They also, how they're hitting the music is nice, a lot of unison, so we're sacrificing staging here. Because it's just a small group, like a combo format, which is what we touched on in the first round. Now we're partying on, super cool, nothing crazy there. She comes up, fun little feature out of it. Also, there is strength in quantity, so if you have a lot of people doing a high level skill, that can contribute to your difficulty of skill score, which is what you end up seeing Brotherhood do with the backflips, right? So the choreography is fine, the unison is fine here, but notice staging is not as clear, it looks more spaced out, which is fine, right? But whenever you're directly being compared to two other teams, that can be a category you can lose to, that can work against you in the overall placements, which once again goes back to, it's hard for 1 mil. I don't know if our judges explain. How are our judges explaining an 81 compared to a 95 compared to a 99? How are they explaining why 1 mil scored the way that they did? And we didn't receive scores in the first round, only in the second. So I'm curious, were they asked to go about it in a different way? That kind of logistic, I'm not sure. That's okay. We'll let the world keep it as a mystery for us for today. But okay, we're going to let GRV play in your own. Now, this routine, it was really nice and very pleasant. Did it remind me of their vibe set? Yes. It's not the same song, but the intention, the storytelling was very similar in the angsty appeal through their textures, through the types of timbre and tonal color of the track, which is cool. It works well because it's a style that they do well. However, is it the most creative thing that they could have done? It's creative because it worked for them, but with their panel may have seen them do this at Vibe or something similar to this at Vibe with the suits, something similar to that. But it doesn't take away from the beauty of it, but you have to remember, if they're being directly compared to other teams, this is a risk. But I thoroughly appreciated it. It would have been really cool to see this in their first round and seeing their second one go in the second round. Would that have made them more competitive? We have no idea. That's the tricky thing. Unison, good spacing. Notice that some of our dancers do have more range in some of the choices compared to others, which will affect your uniformity, right? So we have polyrhythm through delegation, 3 different groups going on, which is also really nice to see. Their choices of uses with the floor works really nice. I would say on the staging side, this is where, when I touched on with Brotherhood, how their staging, they sequence it very well. This whole sequence is really nice and appreciated, where they have a clump and then they break off into the lower level. What I find interesting, though, is we have that level still established. It's pretty separated from the majority of the section. We don't see more levels introduced here. So now we're still saturated in 1-2-part level situation, right? Which is fine. It's to the eye of the beholder, but could that be something that worked against them? There's always that chance. Remember, I am not the end-all be-all, and I could be completely wrong in how these things are being looked at, and that's okay. I'm just trying to be helpful as to why GRV placed the way that they did based on the criteria that were given and what I know about it from how I was exposed to it over the years, right? So just remember that. If you're like, Jess, I don't agree with you, that's fine. Depending on the day and depending on the circumstance or depending on the information that I'm given, I could also change my tune too. That's the beauty of learning, right? So keep that in mind. I just want to be helpful. That's it. Lean over there. So nice unison, which helps with your uniformity and cleanliness. Notice they're all wearing the same thing. Range is slightly off here. That's fun. Where having your feature in front works very well, but also if you're doing a unison section, this is not the same as K-pop, where in K-pop, if you have somebody featured in the center and they're going more full than others around you, we can chalk it up to a dance feature because that's your point is to be featured. Here, if it's all unison, we're expecting everybody to have the same degree of competency of that thing because this is a group dance routine. This isn't a K-pop, everybody singing, everybody, you know. It's a different mentality that we're operating in, and it's a different adjudication structure too. It's not the same as just general public, do you get a pass for it or not, right? So that's the really tricky thing is you get somebody who's, let's say they're the ones who choreographed. If they're the one that is freaking killing it, everybody else is just kind of doing it the same, that's going to affect your uniformity and synchronicity. The pull-up was nice. Travel down was nice, good footwork. The switch off is cool. Little bedrock out of it. So they know how to syncopate. They're showcasing complexity, but somebody fell out of it. It was slight, but it was still something right there front and center to note. Some people can debate and say, oh, that was intentional. Nobody else stumbled to that degree of range. That's where range comes in, is the amount of distance that it takes to get from point A to point B, not just in a move, but in a transition. And so she transitioned more off of the beaten path of that center mark compared to everybody else, so it didn't give that impression that that was an intentional thing done, right? It's all educated guesses here. So this format, which could have worked against GRV, is they're comboing it, meaning that it's okay, we have a small group, they're doing their thing, and then they run off, and then it's another group that comes in. That can affect your creativity. It can affect the staging as well. You know, one thing that I've mentioned before in the vibe stages, because I've been reviewing a lot of vibe, shout out to Chris for that, is you want to be mindful. You don't want your audience nor your judging panel to get a peek into your rehearsing or like how you are formatting your routine unless that's part of your concept. So something such as, okay, we have 3 directors and they're all choreographing sections. I don't believe you showing me that the directors choreograph these specific sections because they're front and center and they're in small groups and they're all separated. I don't know if that was your intention and how you wanted me to see and appreciate that, right? So it's a format thing, which is what I would say is the difference between GRV and Brotherhood. Is Brotherhood sequences their combos more complexly, which would make sense why they took staging. So even here, the melts are nice, but notice that we have our dancers surround in a little cipher half circle moment. This is an example of something like this. I think this is a good thing, where you have a group having choreo into an add-on. Do you see how it's not isolated and you have just a group come on and then they're doing something separate? There is intention behind it, especially if there's wordplay involved, but because that format is so saturated in these spaces that GRV and Brotherhood have operated in, and even in HHF, we're going to throw that in there too, that's something that our audience, I know for myself, I can really only speak about me, I'm going to be more sensitive to seeing that in the staging format. Travel up. So now we have a lot of unison. Head ISO was really cool. We appreciate it. But also, I would say everybody did a pretty good job. Nick did stand out, but he didn't stand out in a way of he's physically doing it better than everybody else. Not quite. It's just he's in front and center. So that makes sense. So now we have a fun little finish. Very nice. So they did very well. Okay, Brotherhood. Brotherhood got such a high score. I mean, for them to take it, that makes sense. That's fine. So they set it up. When it comes to cleanliness, they were really, really clean. Very clean. Also, something Brotherhood I've noticed that they do very well is they utilize their numbers. They don't really have a ton of people go off stage all the time like what we noticed from 1 Mil and GRV. And that, I think, could really help in their favor towards the staging, right? So notice that subtle, very syncopated on our track where it allows us breathability as an audience to digest the track off of tone, wordplay, the lyrics, and how they're structured rhythmically, and the formations. They use formations, they use their levels, they use different layers of dynamics such as break-offs, add-ons, subtle transitions out. They use these, break-off levels where they're doing the same thing, polyrhythms through delegation. Theirs are disguised a little bit more, that it requires me as an audience member or somebody watching to have to look and search to figure out what's going on in a good way, right? So they're trotting around to the side. And also GRV, I wasn't clocking as aggressively as 1 Mil was on the basket runs. I did clock GRV basket run in round 1, not in round 2 as much. It could just be how I was focusing on other elements. I don't know though. They could be doing it. That is so subtle but so readable. That's what makes it really impressive, is that we're probably as far back as where our judges were. They're not at the front at all. They were right by where Clay was when he was doing his commentary. That was pretty far back. So it's very commendable that we can see something so subtle, but it's so readable, right? Can that help in projection and communication? Absolutely. If your subtleties can be picked up like that, whoo, that's competitive, right? The knockdown is cool, nice and clear. That little Ariba, they changed the texture and it was so clear, right? Good transition. They're not going and facing the direction of the transition. They're still facing front as they're making it happen. They said hit it back. Very nice. They hit it through. The hop up is interesting. This with the reverb. And the fact that everybody reverb with the same intention from the same base, meaning that everybody hinged over, so that range was in check, but even this reverb was consolidated to the boundary of the head. That was smart, where you had some individuality, but the range in check was still seen and read. And also the transitions between the lifts coming in and out of them were very nice. They were seamless. They didn't look weighted. They didn't look that we were really pulling out all the stops to make sure we don't hurt ourselves, right? It wasn't a liability, because sometimes lifts can feel that way. A little Harlem out of it, a little brush. So they have such a viral pocket that they like to explore, which can really be risky if you don't know how to innovate it. But they do a good job innovating it. Look at the tension in there. Pulling it out in. The vibration, notice the difference of his vibration compared to the vibration we saw from Royal Family. That one came more of a shake in comparison to a vibration, which is a different muscle engagement, right? And they use that to help with the staging. Very clean and readable. This is cool, where he sends it off on the chest. That was really hard to see on the front cam. That is really dope. This right here. Travel it through, hyping it up. And what they're doing is they're supplementing from this constant that we're hearing with the track, which could be something of a note to GRV and with 1 mil. When you use one track, I mean, I think 1 mil, did they use different tracks? Hold on. Yeah, they did. They did because they had a whole popping section. Okay, GRV and Brotherhood use the same tracks. And also in round 1, you had 1 mil use the same track. GRV used the same track possibly as well. It was the same track that extended through the entire routine. I'm just trying to remember. So sorry if I'm wrong. That's okay. I'm human. But whenever you have a track that extends for the entirety of your set or for a good portion of it, how do you supplement from how it can potentially plateau your set? With GRV, they chose to maintain the angsty pocket and they chose other elements of their staging and content and their format to help with that supplement to keep us engaged. Here, they're using storytelling or the formats of levels and textures and dynamics to keep us engaged, keep listening to the track, even if the track sounds like this to us, right? Which is a very good skill that Brotherhood has done for many, many years. It's a very smart thing that they know how to do well, which has made them as competitive as they have been over the years. Now we've done a transition with the track, right? How they're hitting it out, that could have been very cringe, very corny, not read at all, but how they already introduced those types of dynamics in play, but not in a way that it just feels completely out of pocket, but they've already shown these types of dynamics before, these speed changes, but just in a different timbre that's being represented, which is why there's a familiarity in play, which helps as a puzzle piece that connects the two songs through content, right? So they branch it around. Good ISO on that. That would be considered an intricacy, where they have the flip around, a little subtlety with fixed points, isolations, things combined together in a very fast sequence. It's intricate, right? Very detailed. Yep, subtlety. Nice. Look how readable that is with the clap and the spacing being maintained. Also note, they got every bro on stage still, right? The safety in numbers, but that's the risk in numbers too, is you don't have a break nearly as much. But that will help in your difficulty of content when you have quantity there. That is something to be commendable about. That helps contribute to your staging because you don't have this transition in and out to deal with nearly as much as you see with other groups. That can be a potential distraction, which is what we ended up seeing with some of our other groups. They go high-low, travel it down, so they have this break off with the levels again, so that's something that they have to be very mindful of, is those levels. We're already seeing it introduced where you have a high-low or a low-high, different people, of course, different textures, different techniques, so they're supplementing it, but that could be a risk when you continue to introduce certain formats within how you're showing your levels and your formations. Travel through, polyrhythmic delegation, little add-ons, nice. They already did something like that where they did a rotating shift of it, but because it's a different technique that they're using, very different transition, that's why it doesn't read the exact same. But once again, it's another little thing to be mindful of. They're still going, they're still moving, they're not out of stage. He pulls it out in, come on with the travel through, cross uncross, travel down, come on onto the knees. They have a little please moment there. Da-da-na-na. They pop, new song. They end up switching it up. And the fact they had such a ballad-based kind of track in that middle ground, it helped separate the first track and this track because they have a lot of things they can entertain that are similar. That is a huge risk on, and it can fatigue your audience on certain timbres or certain tonal colors, meaning if my music is saturated in a particular space of sound production, I can kind of become numb to certain sounds, so we're missing opportunities for me to appreciate what they're asking me to digest, which is why song choice and where you place it matters. Drop it down, hit it through, little add-on there. That was a bit complex because it was a, not popcorned, but you didn't have everybody come up. It wasn't a clear group is up to match your feature, but it was still readable. It was cool. There's your add-on little party moment in the back. Like that can look really messy, but the fact that it's clear and readable, this is where cleanliness comes in. It helps make that make sense. Because they could just be going off stage, but no, they're still there. They're still engaging. So they're fighting for that staging the entire time. Yeah, hit it through, high, low. Come on. Look how clean that transition was. So he hits it. So now we got levels introduced here. Helps with staging. There's your add-on. Really nice. Travel it around. Good unison out of it. Toss it cross and cross. Now, spacing could be a little bit better over here on that stage left side. It looks like we're expanding it too far over on the stage left compared to stage right. But the fact that we have our arm swings, we're matching the same pockets, the same timing, but we're different levels, and we have different intentions of volume in our movement is really cool. That please is cool. I like the little nonchalant happening here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people clocking on a back tuck. Lord help us, right? They dropped down and nobody crashed out on it. If we're going to improve anything about it, it's the range with our last 2 guys over on the side, having everybody, it looks like everybody landed at the same time. Nah, we had 2 of our guys land a little bit off, right? But the intention and the power of having 5 people instead of 1 person do it is super commendable. And that helps on difficulty of skills because you have quantity to back it, not just the skill itself. Then he hits it up high, low. Hop hops are nice. They hit, they trot it. The kick is nice with the pop off from one side to another. They have this little lingering feeling out of it. It's cool. Travel it down. The heels are nice to toss it, which is really cool. I love the nonchalant personality that we're seeing. It helps on the, it helps on, I'd say, your communication because it's believable, right? People tend to be more receptive to things that are genuine and authentic. And because a lot of the features that they choose to have a sense of, I'm living my best life. Welcome to the club with me. You know, let me go. It makes me want to be a part of it, which helps on the projection and communication of it, right? It's cool. With the shim, it's like a, I mean, it's not a Harlem per se, but it's ISO'd out the wazoo about it, right? The travel up's nice. It's still clean, and then we end up smeezing it hard. Notice how we do equal spacing to make it nice and balanced. Then we end up doing a little running man. It's still polyrhythmic, so that helps on complexity. Travel it through, they're still messing with the music. Boom, boom. We were able to knock on those bases. We travel it. The toss is cool. And that reminds me of Gnarly by Cat's Eye, which is cool. Then we have the ISOs going. Notice everybody's still on freaking stage. Isn't that crazy? Wow. 3, 2, 1. And they got different levels at the end. So they followed format with a huge risk of keeping everybody on stage because that's going to mess with your fatigue, which will mess with your overall impression, the execution, uniformity, and projection, but it all paid off very well for them. So for them to take the win, it makes so much sense to me. They took more categories than anybody else. Is this a perfect score routine? No. There's still going to be issues, things found. And then it wasn't technically a perfect score, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. Going off of the format of who took more categories would make more sense on this format of league because you're going to have a different panel. I don't believe we're going to have the same panel in all the different countries. You're going to have a different panel that's representative of that country in that stature. That makes sense. I actually don't know that logistic, and I'm excited to, dive in and figure that out. By doing it off of a criteria like send-off is going to make it more equal across the board on your judging panel, which is kind of what you want to have. If your points are carrying over, which they are, and your judges are the ones low-key issuing them because of the placements. Fans, yes, they get a vote, but the fan vote is not the same as the judges. The judges have more weight in their vote because they count as one person counts as one person. All the fans collectively just count as one. You know what I mean? I don't know how that resonates. I don't know if you guys agree. That's okay. That's hopefully this is promoting conversation, and I'm intrigued on how they're going to be making modifications or adjustments because there's certain things that they won't be able to because it's already locked in, it's set in their ways, and you can't change it, or you're messing with the the format as a whole, but there's a certain order that we can go about things. Like I do believe we're about to get into the encores, and we're just going to kind of watch them and do an overview of them. I've already seen them, so I'm going to talk through them if that's okay. If you don't like that, then go watch them and then watch me talk about them. I would rather you do that. Like talking through those, having the encores happen before the announcement of top 3, I think would be a really nice change compared to the first event. Remember, it's the first event. There's going to be a lot of hiccups because that can help with your audience in terms of pacing of your event. Because if you tell us what the final verdict is of the Big Kahuna event, then we're just watching, we're waiting around for like, I don't know, the credits is kind of what it is, which if, you know, it's a really nice way to tally votes or whatever to keep people there and keep them engaged. But that's just my medium take, hot take, whatever. But let's get into the encore stages. All right, Quickstyle, here we come. I may let it play, I may not. I don't think this one I got to hear the music. Ooh. That's cool. Gosh, look at that staging. That was really cool. Yeah. Really nice. Double bass was cool there. Pretty decent pacing here. Decent staging choices. Those tosses were cool. Yep. Good speed change there. The break off was interesting because it was in the middle of a phrase, not at the tail end of one, or at the beginning of one. Nice. Yep. Yep. Come on. Full out. Let's go. Yep. So they do a really good job on the volume and presentation of the choreo. It's really cool. And I like and appreciate that they have content of people coming back in. Range noticed a little bit off here, but that's just one category out of 10. Come on now. Not quite as balanced 100%, but I really like the intention there. Cool, it's cool. Knock it back. Yep. Yep. Yeah, okay. Oh, the L. Formats, we're not really exploring a ton of different angles aside of, oh no. Oh, I guess it got cut off. It happens. I mean, I was able to see this nonetheless, though. Oh man, that's unfortunate. Hopefully they get that fixed, but it is what it is. We still applaud. I think it's Ernie who's been editing all these. Shout out to you, brother. And shout out to, I believe Vibrancy was the one who recorded all the footage. Yeah, that's a bit unfortunate, but I mean, in a nutshell, the routine, in and of itself, it's a nice impression. This beginning is really cool. So what I'm curious about is whenever we're looking at teams like Quickstyle and Jam Republic, and we're about to see theirs, they can be very dangerous if you're not mindful, because if they're able to refine other categories, it's going to make them really, really, really tricky to beat in a matchup, because I said this about Lifeful Alt Rhythm for a very similar reason. Creativity and musicality are honestly, that's the hardest category to get. If you're a team that's known for having a creative perspective or flow, that can really help influence a lot of categories. Even though it's isolated, if you have complexity of movement, creativity is kind of a tiebreaker. If both teams are complex, it's how you present it, how you present the complexity to where it's that noted for us to admire and appreciate it, which can come down to creativity. Because if you allow your audience to learn something while you're dancing, that's a huge victory for both parties. It is, because we're naturally wanting to learn as humans. And so if we're exposed to spaces such as this, like seeing how they open it up with the reverb on that, like whenever you're learning how to approach a track with this type of dynamic, it allows you to want to engage. So that's a fantastic engagement on an intro, right? But notice with this one, they kind of ran into the problem that I said as a potential note that we encountered in the round twos is whenever you have a constant track with a certain flow, if you're not approaching something new to it, or if you're not supplementing, I'm not going to say new, a supplement, which is what Brotherhood did in their second round. They supplemented for the constant flow of the respective tracks they did, but they also mashed it. So they had a breather track of a different flow introduced because the timbres and tonal colors of the track called for it, that allowed for us to take a breather as well, so we can get back into the hype, back into those certain synth nuances that help us appreciate the genre. Here, it was still a one-off. It was the same constant. And did we have enough supplementing? I don't know. I don't think so. But this whole beginning, all of this is really fun. It has a interesting texture, an interesting groove and pocket introduced with our features. It's really nice. It's cool. It's awesome. All of that is a really nice choice. And honestly, this whole little 30 seconds is probably the most competitive thing Quickstyle brought tonight. And now some people may be like, well, Jess, why didn't they put it in round one? A lot of crews, you know, they want to put their more competitive one in the second round because that's where the money comes in. But the tricky thing is strategy is, do you go with the harder round because of your opponent, or do you go with the round that works for you, and then if you pass, you pass? I don't know. That's kind of the thing, because you don't want to throw away your second round, but also both of your routines should be competitive. But we all know there's going to be one routine that's more competitive than another depending on who you're against in that pool, right? So all that, how they choose to showcase their features are really nice, but you are noticing that they, you know, kind of keep to a certain catalog of formations, and we got to see that a bit saturated here. But I do appreciate, like, when it comes to potential, I'm very intrigued on what they're going to be doing in the future matchups for sure. Okay, we have Jam Republic, They Can't Hold Us by Macklemore. Love the song. Very good song. Hey, hey, hey. The domino effect was cool. Now I know they have visa issues with some of their guys, which is a very interesting logistic about this entire league that other leagues don't have to encounter as much. Visa issues influencing whether a team's going to do well or not because of the quantity of people they have. Because we're missing people here. Little monastery with the bass makes sense on that. Good skill on that. Humble, a little bit of cautious, somewhere between like Rocky and Cosby Sweating. Nice aggression here to help match the aggression of the sound off at the end of the phrase that Macklemore brought there. It was cool. That rebound reversal was cool. Chasing dreams since I was 14. And one of the guys on this team, he's a part of a breaking hybrid crew from Malaysia. I think it's like Takarba. That guy right there. So I've seen his work before. So I'm actually really happy that he's here. This is now we're seeing a prep of a lift or a jump or something in the back. And we're using their dancers as a cover-up. So it's cool to see the up moment, but it wasn't something as much of an unpredicting element from where we're sitting, which is where our judges would be sitting. Come on now. Fight till it's over, so we put it. With the add-on, it's cool. Ceiling can't hold. Their breaking phrases are going to continue to get better and better, because that's what that guy is known for, is breaking to not break beats. Is cool. And so we put our hand. Really nice way of getting everybody up with different contrasts. That lean is cool. Little partner moment, it's cool. The break off is nice, but notice they have a lot of really cool skills, but not a ton of people doing those skills, which is something that Brotherhood had. They had quantity of people doing difficult things. That was nice on the timing. Nice, boom. Subtlety, boom. Down your little fight till it's over. Yeah. It was a really nice routine, and I do know that some of the formatting of the formations are going to improve when we have the full house there. So that's the unfortunate thing too, right? Is that you didn't have everybody represented of the team here, and the spacing and staging they were at a huge disadvantage because they did not have their people to help with the balance and symmetry of their routine, which it happens, right? So that's something that we can't really hold them accountable to because they couldn't control that. But other things such as the cleanliness, their range, notice even here with the ankles, a little bit, not all on the same page for that kind of stuff. But whenever you have team synergy, or whenever you're with the team for a long time, which I know a lot of them came on just for this project, that's naturally going to get better the longer they're together. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. They have the creativity and musicality down, like the risk-taking or where they're choosing their minds to go on a track like this and how they're phrasing their dynamically with their content. They're in a really great place for that, right? So look at the aggression. Like I said, it matched the attention to the aggression that you saw Macklemore, or you heard Macklemore develop in those lines. And also, those are the two best lines in that first verse, second verse, were the ones they spliced together. So I was really happy about that. They know how to communicate, and that's something really impressive. Like that, INDEP. So notice how they're creating nice fullness, and they're integrating and consolidating and condensing with the torso to help with the IND, with the consonants and staccato of it. It's really cool. It's a very full body experience for that. Two little feature moments. So it does look like they have this impression of being bound. So there's a storyline in play. Was it the most readable? I mean, I feel like they communicated that to a certain extent, but not so clearly that it was I see, like, well, we saw when they broke from it, right? But it was very simple. We didn't progress. Like, once that happened, where are we going from there? Is it just a celebration? Maybe. I mean, it's basically you can't hold us. So they're emulating the track in that way, which we can respect. That's fun. Come on with a loose leg. I'm not quite clear on that second one, but that that little exchange. So he's still bound, is what it looks like there. So he takes it down. Not as big of a moment as I feel like it could have been for that. But yeah, in general, they also, so Quickstyle and Jam have huge potential in the areas of refining the uniformity side, figuring out different ways of their staging too, because they got creativity and musicality in really competitive ways here, where other teams, you do have to sacrifice to a certain extent creative avenues and endeavors for the sake of maintaining cleanliness and uniformity for the people that you have on your team. But there's beauty. That's why there's multiple categories. It's not just one. How did it make you feel? Like, that's so subjective. But at least we're trying to measure it in some way here, right? Okay, we have Royal Family, their second one. I saw it, but I didn't get to hear it with music. So this is cool.
3, 2, 1.
I see the rock. Cool. This is a fun vibe. I heard this this song in a hot minute. Good risk there. Cool. Cool. Oh, you know who's done choreo to the song? Trisha Miranda. Probably one of her best combos I've ever watched in my life was Trinidad Girls. So I think we're a little bit off on our staging. If you look at distance. Really, with Royal, they have staging. They have projection. They can bring difficulty, especially through formation structure. The tricky thing is they have to figure out a way to beef up the complexity because it's so readable. There's beauty with that, especially for the brand that they are. But for this circuit in particular, because of who they're against, if they want to be able to make it past round one, they have to reassess on the complexity side. They can do things well together. What will help them is not repeating and creating ambidextrous choices on, movements on both sides to even base pockets. When we change, we don't have a ton of unpredictable timing elements that are not, it's stifling them in that way. They have certain really cool creativity potential as well. And how they're approaching stuff, right? So that's the really big thing for Royal is what we just mentioned, because they have uniformity and cleanliness, and what would make that area very competitive is by beefing up the difficulty and complexity of it, because they know how to project as well. So it's really, they can execute the things that they're doing quite successfully, but part of that is because it's so digested, and we see it done to both sides for like an entire 8 count. So they're showing we know how to do this, so they're executing it well and consistently, but there's not enough variety within for us to see and make it competitive with other categories, if that makes sense. But all in all, this was a really nice routine. This routine with Royal gives the impression of the Royal that we have now, which is good to me, because I know there have been people who are like, we'll stick to the old stuff, but then they got in hot water on the Mnet World Extreme Woman Fighter because they used the old stuff, but that they were told to use the legacy choreos by Paris and her dad, right? Who was the manager of them there overseas. And Mnet did not set them up for any sort of success either. They treated Royal not that great on the show. They didn't treat them well in the editing, and I think part of it comes from Royal wasn't putting up with it in the production side. And there were other teams that came out and weren't putting up with it, and we got what we got at the end of that season. So I'm saying, like, it's really nice to see a lot of the people that we saw on the Mnet show here, and I like knowing them from that here so we can appreciate them here. And this does give the impression that we get to see this is the Royal of this generation, and it is competitive. There are certain areas that if they improved or if they worked or applied themselves to, they're not incapable of it. It's just, in order to make it competitive with who they're directly against, it can really shake things up, right? So especially if they do it in New Zealand, they got home field advantage on that bad boy too, right? So all in all, I enjoyed taking a look at the wide shots of these. It was really nice for us to appreciate the transitions and the overall staging, which is an actual legitimate criteria here. So it allows me the ability to either double down and, you know, be like, this is why I voted the way that I did, or it allows me to make adjustments or understand why it flip-flopped the ways that it could have, you know? So, oh man, very much looking forward to hearing y'all's thoughts as well. I don't know if I'll continue to watch IDL. I think it just depends on how, you know, how this fares on YouTube. This could get blocked. I don't know. I did get permission from production to react, but I do breakdowns, so I don't know if that's something they wanted me to do. So if they don't like it, this can get taken down, and it is what it is. You know, but I may just limit myself to just looking at wide shots versus the live stream, because I don't know if I'm able to be as beneficial there as I am here. So, and I'd like the first watch to be something that we look at together in a wide cam perspective. But you guys know me, I know you. I'm Jess, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.